back here. It's a little bit deja vu all over again. So I'm really excited. I was glad I didn't have to decide between panels, and I got to do both because they were both so interesting and fascinating and great opportunity. And I felt like one went right into the next. So for those of you who were here for the last one, I'm so glad you stuck around because we're going to dig deep into cannabis as medicine. So if each of you could introduce yourself, Kamal. Sure. Yes.
Testing, all right. I'm Kamal Kalsi. On a good day, I'm a ER doctor. I've been in the Army for 19 years. So I have to give you a disclaimer. Anything I say today is just my own opinion. If I say anything silly or stupid, don't blame the Army, don't blame DOD. It's just me.
Hi, I'm Kristen Price. I'm a co-founder of Hoop Beauty. It's a hemp-based CBD beauty line, and we're here at New West doing our soft launch, and I'm just going to talk about a little bit more of the patient perspective and how hemp CBD really changed my life.
I'm Josh Prevey, known as like Prebes. I am a skateboarder turned entrepreneur, cancer survivor.
All right. Thank you. Round of applause for everybody here. So where do we see the overlap between what I'm going to call recreational and wellness and medical? Where do we draw the lines between them? Is it important? Does it matter where we draw the lines? What do you think about this, Kamal?
Well,
You?
You know, the lines are blurring. You know, and where you have some wellness products, some folks are going to be using them for recreation. And where you have some wellness products, some people are going to, like some cancer patients are going to start using them because it works. You know, and even though we need more research, there's a ton of anecdotal evidence. You know, I've seen it just myself over the years. Folks that I've treated in the ER, cancer patients, folks with sleep disorders, PTSD, depression. A lot of my fellow soldiers. They use it because it works. And, humans have been using cannabis for thousands of years. And if there was really nothing behind it, people would have stopped using it.
Anybody else have anything they want to say on the wellness conversation? Okay, well, do I get to give an opinion? No, I'll just ask the questions on this one. So, you often hear that cannabis, if you listen to some of the hype and the marketing and the branding and the press release, this and that, it sounds like, cannabis is the new snake oil, it's a panacea and it can fix everything. In my experience, that has truly hurt the acceptance of cannabis. Because when you say it can do everything short of growing back missing limbs, you really lose your authority when you say it can help with other things. So, it's not a panacea. What are the other things? Diet, exercise, mind, body, spirit. What else do we need? And how does cannabis play a role in that, do you see? How about you, Kristen? You had a unique perspective on this.
So I have a really rare cluster of diseases, and I was labeled by the NIH as one of 6 in the world. And I was basically thrown into a world of experimental treatment and was just told, you're not going to get better. You're going to live like this, and this is how your life's going to be. We don't know how to help you. And at age 15, after losing 60% of my hair and having chronic joint pain and rashes and periodic fevers that were debilitating, I went to my parents and I said, I'm done. I want to be off all my meds. And they hesitantly let me. And I turned to hemp CBD. And 3 months later, I was sitting at a hairdresser and I brought in my wig to go get it styled for prom. And the hairdresser was like, sweetie, where do you have alopecia? I turned to her with a very nasty look on my face and was like, what do you mean I don't have alopecia? She handed me a mirror and turned me around, and sure enough, my hair had grown back, and I had 1 inch of new hair growth.
I'm getting chills from that, actually.
Yeah, and I decided on that day from there on I was going to take a different path, and I was going to use hemp CBD to help maintain a healthy status and help manage my joint pain and my symptoms. And with that, I also made a bunch of lifestyle changes. It wasn't just accredited to the hemp CBD, but it really helped guide the whole process. And yeah, so that's a little bit of my story and where I stand on that.
Right, that's great. You know, I just want to say, you prefaced it with hemp CBD. CBD is CBD, whether it comes from hemp or from cannabis or from it's a chemical, right? So,
But is all CBD the same? I mean, I heard of a Canadian company that said they were going to have bacteria grow it or something like that.
yeah, they're doing growing CBD in petri dishes. They're doing it in yeast. They're doing it in all sorts of different ways right now for standardization and all. Then you're just going to end up with another pharmaceutical, basically, where you're going to have a single molecule and they're going to throw in a couple of fake terpenes and call it medicine.
But I would argue that that CBD may not be the same as the stuff that's produced by plants.
Right.
You know, the 3D folding is it's a very, very complicated procedure, and I just think it'll be different.
Right. So hemp CBD is the same as cannabis CBD. It's just CBD. When we're talking, let's for sake of communication, just decide that CBD, when we're talking about it in this place, unless we're saying pharma or single molecule, we're talking about coming out of the cannabis plant, whether it's from the Farm Bill hemp side or whether it's from the regulated cannabis side for the purposes of medical benefits, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. You're in a state right now still that doesn't allow cannabis-based CBD,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Right.
I live in North Carolina.
Right, so that's where the benefit is from the Farm Bill to allow that. So down in LA, Prebes, I want to bring you in this right now. I mean, you've been your whole life and career are really responsible for, and all your successes. It all started with selling bags of weed, right? Trust the.
There we go. So
Yeah.
there we go. So yes, I sold weed on a big level. Invested into me and my friends started our own skateboard company. That turned into obviously. I don't know. I'm getting kind of nervous now. This is fucking gnarly with the lights and shit. So sorry. It's like I think I tell myself I'm not nervous, but really I'm. So.
Okay, let me ask you a better direct
So we
question.
talked a lot, so
Yep.
I was
Let
a
me
lot
make it easier
easier to
for
be
you.
open. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to make it easier for you here. So you started out on the 100% rec, having fun, selling weed, making money, having fun with your friends.
Correct.
And then, lo and behold, you were diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, so August 3rd, 2018, I was diagnosed with stage 2C seminoma, which is testicular cancer. But since I hadn't been to the doctor in like 8 years, I had a 27 centimeter tumor growing in my abdomen between my spine and my organs. So yeah, I was like, it's been about a year and like a month. So it's been kind of gnarly because my whole life before that was just kind of doing my companies and partying and living life, not really like, I hadn't been a doctor in a long time. So yeah, I mean, I really don't know what to say at this moment because I'm like freezing.
So how did you decide to give...
maybe help me go a little bit so I
Right.
could like
So how
relax
did
a
you
little bit.
decide to have cannabis?
So
to
realistically,
approach
it was a big shock, and I had to go into chemo right away. So I did 5 days a week, 5 hours a day of chemo, and I did 3 rounds, and then in between. So the first round I did in the hospital. So when I got out of the hospital, I was kind of like thought it was going to be all good, and then all the chemo and all the drugs kind of wore off me. And then kind of moving forward, because the tumor was so big and it didn't attach to any of my organs, I didn't really get my testicle, I didn't get my shit removed before. So everything was just kind of intense, So how I guess the cannabis and what we're talking about, so I don't fucking ramble on, is when they took out my, because obviously I'm in the cannabis space and heavily involved in it. So when all this stuff happened, so everything outside of the chemotherapy of what they pumped in, I did everything, the surgery, removal, all that with no opiates, no nothing. And they prescribed me everything you could imagine. Like, so when they took my testicle out, it was like 40 Percocet and 40 OxyContin. And so what I took the whole time, it was RSO oil, obviously all this stuff my friends made for me, and 1,000 milligram THC pills. And obviously, if you don't smoke weed a ton, that'll fucking knock you out. But realistically, it worked for me, you know what I mean? And obviously, I grew up skateboarding and...
Prebes?
What up? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's why Jim put me on here. He wants a little different flavor to this shit. So oh, there we go. Sorry. So it's gonna be, now you're gonna make me even more nervous. Not trying to.
I'm just teasing you. I'm teasing you.
Okay.
Yeah. Fine, she's 17. Oh, 17. I'm sorry. So the whole time, I'm look a lot better. I was completely bald. I did the whole, because obviously I come from the skateboard world, and a lot of us, you don't really think about those type of things happening. So when it happened, I didn't really know how I was going to tell people. I was kind of like a personal, my outside world people know about, but my personal life I wasn't really too open about. So I documented the whole thing on my Instagram and showed what it was like to go from day one all the way through chemo treatment. And I finished chemo, I think, in October, almost like in like 3 weeks, it'll be a year since I finished chemo. And then since then, my tumor shrunk to almost it's pretty much almost gone. And they wanted to cut my stomach open, from here to remove it. And because the tumor is so big and it broke down so much that, it was kind of like an intricate surgery, you could say. So I just kind of told them, and my chick, the other half, changed my whole life and my mental thing and eating and all that kind of shit. So I think the tumor is pretty much gone. I didn't get surgery. And I'm not saying the cannabis fucking did it all, but as far as the mental and like changing and all of that thing, that's a big part of it, Like your mental, if you can fucking say I'm going to do it. But, any kind of opiates and all that is just a cover up and a numbness just to cover something up. It definitely isn't a medicine. So, yeah, I'm going to stop talking. Yeah, you're great. Yeah. Perfect. So, on the other flip side of saying cannabis is not a panacea, and it harms the industry and it harms our moving forward when we act like it is. On the other hand, it's an amazing medicine that's treating so many people successfully, integrated into their health care. Not as an alternative, but as integrated into it. How do we, without FDA approved and all this, how do we have the conversation and talk about this with patients, with people, without making medical claims? How do we, how do we have the conversation?
Yeah, it's really hard, and I don't know, in the audience, do we have folks that actually create products? Do we have, yeah? So you make a really valid point. You cannot make a medical claim. So you can't say, this is going to help with pain, this is going to treat a rash, this is going to help with your PTSD, anxiety, depression, the list goes on. You can't do that because that you're saying that this is a drug, and you're not licensed to actually create drugs. So, it's a difficult conversation to have with patients and doctors because of that, because it's it's part food, it's part medicine, it's part it's a nutraceutical. And so this is not an area that doctors have, been taught about, and there's a lot of ignorance, even on the patient side. Patients don't really know dosing or how to use it. I had a lady come to me and she's like, yeah, this CBD stuff's garbage. I took a whole 5 milligram pill and it did nothing. And it's like a whole 5 milligrams.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, it's amazing you're still standing. It's like 5 milligrams. But So this is the problem, and I remember reading an article not too long ago that half of the products don't even have CBD or cannabinoids in it, and so we have plenty of bad actors, and so the industry itself needs to clean up, and that's why the FDA is going to get involved at some point, and once the industry starts to mature, I think it'll be easier to have these conversations with patients, with doctors, and the entire healthcare industry.
So, Kristen, you're as we mentioned before, we're in an illegal state for cannabis, and you're using CBD, and you've started a company. Which I'm very excited, by the way, full disclosure, I'm on her advisory board.
Yes.
So, I obviously think that it's a wonderful opportunity to open the door and open the eyes to a lot of people. What kind of, have there been pushback, stigma, people not wanting their kids hanging with you? I mean, are they see it as a drug dealer? I mean, what's going on there?
It's been a really interesting experience at school, let's just say that. We have to do a senior project every year. I'm a senior in high school. And I obviously was like, I'm making mine Hoop Beauty because it's already like my company. I want to run with it. And when I brought it to my teacher, my advisor, she was like, you want to do what, Kristen? You want that to be your senior project? Are you suggesting that people should be using drugs? I said, okay, let's sit down and have a conversation. I need you to hear me out. So we sit down, and I tell her my story, and I tell her what hemp has done for me and what CBD has done for me and how it has changed my life. And I had to explain to a 48-year-old woman, me being 17, that the difference between THC, the difference between marijuana, the difference between CBD and all that. And after a 45-minute conversation, she said, in tears, she said that she understood now and that it would be okay to do that. And if I have to do that 1,000 times over and over again, I will. And that's really my mission as my company, to educate people and educate the teenage generation and older generations about the benefits of CBD. And as for my schoolmates, I got a lot of, so you just must be a stoner, right? Or, is this just an excuse for you to say that you like marijuana? And the amount of conversations I've had are just so interesting, and there's so many of them. But I will fight till the end of my life to help educate people and get the word out there. And so
good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Prebes, here we go. Yeah, I mean, I know you got it in you. Just pretend like we're sitting on the phone again talking.
I know, we had such a good conversation, and I'm a lot better one-on-one, so if you want to,
I mean, you're great on the stage, too.
So I guess, when I first got diagnosed and, the doctors can't, I was really open about me being involved in cannabis and all of those type of things, and they couldn't really give me any advice. And I think with society today, everyone's so used to numbness, and, I'm 41, so when I grew up skateboarding, you broke your arm, you went to the doctor, they put a cast on it, and that was it. Nowadays, you go and get your teeth pulled, they'll give you, you could talk a doctor into really prescribing you anything. So obviously, that's a bigger conversation, I think, of why it all happens, which I'm sure, it's a big corporate giant, which I think in the last panel you guys were talking about before of why, But for me personally, I've lost a lot of my friends with the opiate addiction and all those things, and a couple of my friends I grew up with died, and you know what I mean? So when you're put in the position, because I never have been really gone to the doctor to even put myself even to you changed my whole life, you know what I mean? And I think a biggest thing is the mental side, your lifestyle, everything. We live in such a fast pace, and I was such a victim of now, make money, keep going. And when you really hit a roadblock and you open up, you're like, oh shit, there's way more to life than just all this rat race, you know what I mean? And I think, using the cannabis medical side to it definitely works because I've done it. My tumor is almost nothing. I'm super healthy. I surf all the time again. I'm back I have a scan in like 3 weeks, and the mental side and all the things that I've done, I've changed my diet, my sleeping patterns. I'm like getting these vitamin C injections, before, all this stuff. If you look into the tumor and what kills tumors and feeds tumors and all that. And, I was a huge victim of eating candy and living off top ramen. And that's just what you do when you grow up, So I never, being in the skateboard world and doing all that, I never really got to like grow up on a sense of like taking responsibility to that until now. So I think all of cannabis is just going to heal you, but all of these things changing in like mental state and eating and all that with the cannabis, I believe helps and will heal you. You know what I mean? But you got to believe in it too. You can't be like what you said. I took a couple things and because if you smoke a joint, you're going to get high as fuck if you don't smoke. Sorry. I'm just gonna stop talking because it's so hard for me. I'm like concentrating on what to say and then not to like talk how I talk, and so it's like.
You're doing just fine. You're just fine. I was just shacking with you anyway because every
want your mom to
third
get
word
boned.
out of my mouth. So there you go. So the question I have is, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but trees by game.
Yeah. So the rapper, the game we do. So
Right,
I have a
let me
marketing
ask the
agency
question.
called.
Let me ask the question first.
Okay.
How do you feel about the celebrities that are entering the cannabis space, and what is their responsibility to how they use their celebrity? Now you can go.
Okay, that's a great question. So obviously, I have a marketing agency called the Bevel Group, and we currently do the Trees by Game brand, which is the rapper, the game. His obviously we created the whole thing with Green Street to bring it to market. Create the whole packaging, create the whole image, create the whole story behind the brand. And I think with someone like the game, and the reason I'm behind it is because he's obviously been whatever it is, he's been an advocate of cannabis before this was even relevant and popular to make a profit off of it. That's one thing. But a lot of the other celebrities and a lot of the other things, I mean, it can go deep. I feel like there's tons of people that are in this industry for the wrong purposes. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's a huge financial gain. Obviously, you know what I mean? But there's a bigger picture to that, and there's a whole history of people that have been involved in this and have helped it get to this point that I think a lot of the people that are involved in it now forget where it came from and the people that helped get it here, And am I going off track?
You're perfect.
Okay. Well, now I'm off track.
Okay. All right.
So sorry.
That's okay. Okay. So, Kamo, I'm going to go back to you with a couple of questions in a row because I just want to make sure we get to them. And we're already, I can see the time. Oh, wait, no, that's not the time. Oh, we're good. We're way good. Okay. So, obviously, coming from the Army, federal agency, we're having people survive wars at a rate that they never have before, but they're coming back really broken, and then they just have a long life of continuous maintenance and suffering and addicted to all sorts of opioids and other drugs. I mean, obviously, you've seen this firsthand. How do you straddle, because you're still in the reserves, right? So how do you straddle your desire to move these people into healthier options away from pharmaceuticals, some of these particular types of pharmaceuticals, I should say, over to cannabis and not risk the fact that you're still in the military?
Yeah, it's a really tough line to walk. When so I've been in the Army 19 years now. When I was active duty before, so in 2011, we deployed to Afghanistan, and we took care of hundreds of combat casualties, gunshot wounds, blast injuries, just some really devastating injuries. And I became friends with a lot of these soldiers. We started them on opiates and benzos and antidepressants, and essentially turned them into zombies. And as I sort of over the years kept in touch with a lot of them, they would start coming back to me and start saying, we started using CBD or we started using cannabinoids, and we've been able to get off our opiates. Some of them are like, we were able to, ever since I started using CBD, I was able to stop drinking alcohol. I'm not as angry anymore. I don't have the nightmares anymore. I mean, it's just really what some of these veterans are experiencing is just heartbreaking. and so they're able to, once they start using this stuff, they're able to reconnect with their families. It's like they have their lives back again, and that's what sort of that was an epiphany for me, because I had never heard of this stuff before. I mean, I don't even drink. I mean, forget cannabis. I don't even drink. And so when my soldiers, my friends, started coming to me and saying, "Hey, this stuff is this is something different here," it really changed something in me. And so I became a huge advocate. But I'm still, when I see a soldier and I'm treating a soldier, I still cannot tell them that it's okay for them to have cannabinoids. Now CBD, if it's a pure CBD isolate, they can use that, because it won't cause them to use to pop hot on a urine drug screen. So that's okay, and I know a lot of professional athletes that also use CBD isolate for that reason. But it's not as good as the full spectrum stuff. So I'm torn. But that's the only thing that's available to them. But the patients I see in the civilian side, when I'm treating them in the ER, I say, "Hey, you've tried all this stuff, and this is like the 6th time you're coming to the ER for your chronic pain. Maybe you can try some cannabinoids. Maybe talk to your doctor about getting a medical card for cannabis and trying it out." And a lot of them, do. Some of them don't. But it is a tough line as a doctor to walk, especially still being in the military.
So the next question I'd like to ask you also, because this is about cannabis being a medicine, because cannabis is a medicine. We cannot make medical claims other than Epidiolex is the only one that's made it through the FDA, and it's Schedule 5, which is just let's not even get into how ridiculous that is. But the reality is, along with medicines, there are interactions in our bodies and responsibilities that we have. And you have people buying off Etsy and Amazon and all sorts of products, and you have people that are, they're using hemp to clean the soil because it's an accumulator. Then they're taking it and processing it and selling the CBD because it doesn't have to be lab tested. So then you're having people taking heavy metals and toxins and all sorts of things into their bodies. But let's just let's just look at the chemistry of our body and the really exciting world of the cytochrome P450, which is the way that over 50% of all pharmaceuticals are designed to be metabolized is through this enzyme in the liver. CBD has a tremendous impact on that. Can make some drugs stronger, some weaker, some not even activate at all. So how do we go from CBD CBD is easy, everyone should be able to have it anywhere, and how do we balance that with the fact that we need to be giving people some warnings about taking it along with other things?
Yeah, it's a really great point. CBD is processed. Most of the cannabinoids are processed through the liver. So if you have any sort of liver issues, if you've got hepatitis, you got cirrhosis, you may want to talk to your doctor first, because that's where all this is processed. And so I always tell patients, look, you want to talk to your doctor first, because if you're taking a medication that's also processed in your liver, it could potentially affect that. And so you wouldn't want your blood pressure medicines or your anticoagulants or your diabetes medicine to change, right? It would change the concentrations of those medications in your bloodstream. So again, it's important that we start to involve healthcare personnel in these decisions, and we definitely want to avoid people being harmed by this wonderful medicine.
So have either of you, Kristen or Preebs, spoken to your doctor about the fact that you're using CBD or THC? I mean, just using cannabinoids that do go through and that may affect your other drugs?
Yeah, I brought it up to my doctor, all my doctors. I have about 5 different doctors, but at first they were all kind of confused, a little hesitant, and as expected, and I just talked to them a little bit more, and I fortunately do have a healthy liver and stuff like that, and I'm off the majority of my other medicines. So yeah, they were pretty supportive and very thrilled about the results that I'd had so far, and were very supporting, which I'm very, very fortunate.
On our side, or my side, I guess, our side, because a lot of the people that were with me are here through my cancer thing. But yeah, being my doctor, obviously, in the very beginning, when you kind of get diagnosed, you go over all of this, your whole lifestyle type thing of everything. And obviously, I was super open of what I did and couldn't, pretty much couldn't give me any advice, you know what I mean? And me and my doctor through the medical system is obviously screwed up, and I didn't see eye to eye with my doctor, and then halfway through my chemo treatment they switched me to a new oncologist. So it was just kind of and because I was in chemo for 5 hours a day 5 days a week repetitively for so long, I sat there and kind of watched how this whole doctor's office whole thing kind of maneuvered, and it's pretty gnarly. So on the cannabis side, there's no, you know what I mean? It's pretty much shut down right when it's brought up. They can't really give you any sort of advice. Kind of when you first spoke, you're kind of, whatever I say, it's not really advice. So when you're sitting in my position as far as having a huge tumor and all of that, and I'm kind of like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I mean, even when I was, and it's on my Instagram too, even when I was sitting in my hospital bed, like the 3rd day, I'm taking vape hits and using tinctures inside the hospital, you know what I mean? So I stopped smoking weed, because that's usually how I smoke my cannabis or whatever. But during the whole chemo treatments and everything I did, the RSO I feel like was the biggest, I felt like, it was the biggest one that kind of helped shrink my tumor a lot. But I also changed my diet. I started eating candy every day, and, there's a bigger picture to the whole health thing rather than, what I was saying before, But the doctors, obviously, no disrespect to any doctors, but I mean, fuck, it's pretty rough out there.
Right, right. So there is a little, it's not an exact, but it's a little rule of thumb that it's just an easy way to do it, that if a drug has a grapefruit warning, chances are it's going to have a warning for CBD. I mean, THC as well, but way more CBD. It's a much stronger interaction. So just know that if your doctor or when you go to the pharmacy and they say this may have you shouldn't have grapefruit, that's code for you need to watch the CBD intake and the timing. Or your doctor may just need to change the drug or change to a different dose if
Yeah, it'd probably be a good idea to have your doctor check your liver enzymes and your liver function at least once a year, maybe every 6 months, if you're taking large amounts of it.
So we're talking a lot more about CBD here because that's certainly, I know with you, of course, Kristen and Hoop is a CBD line, and I assume that the game is not all about THC dominant? Or
So Trees by Game's a premium high-end flower brand. We don't focus, but we are, me and one of my friends right here, we're about to launch a CBD brand for sports athletes and pain creams, and we're doing it. I don't know how much I can say as of yet because there's not a lot of contracts and everything signed and stuff. So, but yeah, we're doing it to kind of help and make all U.S. grown, because I think it's the biggest thing. If you look at the CBD and all the hemp, and majority of it's sourced from China, and me being in the skateboard industry, we don't even source our skateboards from China. We make them here because, no disrespect to China, but, it's not as good of quality, you know what I mean? So if you're going to put something in your body, obviously you want something that's grown here and, all those type of things. So, yeah, I'm getting super frazzled again, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to make sure that there isn't the impression, especially from my perspective, and anyone knows that what I do, that the other 143 cannabinoids aren't being thrown under the bus, like CBD is the medicine and the rest of it's just to get high, because that could not be further from the truth. You have approximately 400 terpenes, you have flavonoids, you have cannabinoids, you have all these things, terpenoids within the plant that are each have their own medicinal benefits as well. And I don't want it to become, to a hammer, everything's a nail and CBD is the answer to everything, when there's a whole bunch of other properties within the plant that are the medicine. And I think that it's important that we keep moving the law. I mean, I shouldn't be giving an opinion, but move the laws along so that people have access to whatever it is they need, and it's not up to legislators deciding which cannabinoid is going to be okay to put into our bodies based upon geography.
I also think too, once the medical, fuck, I'm so frazzled, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
Yeah.
Take your time.
What were we talking about?
We're all here and love you.
What were you talking about again?
We're just talking about the fact that it's the whole plant and
That's
it's
what I
all
had
the
something to say.
different cannabinoids and terpenes.
Oh,
that are
yeah.
medicine.
So this is what I was going to say. So sorry. So I feel like a lot of the really smart researchers and a lot of them, people haven't really been able to research it, 110% full bore. You know what I mean? I think that's the problem to it. I think there's going to be tons of things that they find out. I think it's just a small piece of what we know now. You know what I mean? It's just until it's all accepted in all countries around the world and everybody's kind of figuring out. I mean, if they can figure out how to numb you to where you can't even feel anymore, I'm sure they can figure something out. You know what I mean? I just feel it's such a beginning part of the stage, because the RSO oil, I feel like, the full plant extract and all of the plant, the whole thing, whatever you can figure out and extract that, I feel like is the biggest positive right now. But obviously, you can't do that everywhere. You know what I mean? But on a medical benefit side, because it has everything. But I'm not a researcher, obviously, and I'm not into all of those things. But until the whole world and all the different techniques of research and all those things and meet together and everyone's working for one goal, I think, we're still at a very small stage.
I think cannabis is the most widely studied plant that's ever been done. I think there's over 10,000 studies at this point that have been done on it, but we really do need more studies. I mean, there's 400.
More cultures too, you know what I mean?
Well, there's
all over
400
everywhere.
were done on Adderall. So let's just take a look at what, how that is. So there's been a lot of studies on cannabis. They just aren't the kind that doctors from this new paradigm of the single molecule, understand. Plant medicine is as old as time, and we reduced it down, thank you, Bayer, to a single molecule and changed the conversation with the double-blind placebo way of looking at it. Do you see that as a really a sensible even path to go that direction when talking about something that we know definitively through the research works better when you have the entourage and you have the whole plant?
It's a great question. We have created this, for better for worse, this industry. This industrial complex of healthcare that says, okay, we are going to find a compound or a molecule. We think it works. We're going to test it. Then we're going to mass produce it. We make money off of it. All right? That's this life cycle. And it's sort of become a thing, and now the whole world is replicating it. We did it with insulin, we did it with acetaminophen, aspirin, ibuprofen, and all these cancer medications have followed that same model, right? But where did they figure out that these compounds would work? They go back to the Native Americans that would pull off the willow bark, right? They're like, oh, something's in here. Something in here takes our pain away, makes us feel better. And so I think we keep going back to this thing where we're at odds with nature, and nature's approach is not to pull off an individual molecule and then have yeast or bacteria mass produce it for the pharmaceutical industry. I guarantee you that's what they're going to try to do.
They're doing it.
They're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's the dumbest way to do it. So that's my personal opinion.
You're on camera.
Yeah.
You're up here, so you're already one
Yeah.
up. You know, we all like it.
Yeah. We agree. Yeah.
But so, we're at odds with nature when we try to pull something apart and then we decide, okay, we're going to bring these elements back together and we're going to call it a medicine. I think nature does it better. I think when you have the full spectrum cannabinoids and you extract them and you give them to people whole, I think that works way better than when we try to, break shit apart and then put it back together. It's just not, it's not as good. So, in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think that, how often are there drugs like Zantac is the latest one that's being pulled off the shelves, and it went through rigorous trials. So these, gold standards, I have a biopharmaceutical company. We do clinical and preclinical trials, and we do all this, and it's expensive and it's rigorous. We are doing it all with full spectrum. We're doing it with whole plant, and it is much more complicated, but that's our commitment to this. But this gold standard is 90 or 100 years old, and which is a blip in the way medicines have been created. It's a blip in time, and I think that we're going to look back, like long after I'm gone, but we're going to look back and go, wow, did we ever screw up in that 100 years? Thank God we got smart again and went back to the root.
Yeah, because it costs billions of dollars to come up with an amazing drug if you go through the current system. And so the problem isn't necessarily the fact that they're making these drugs. It's the system that we have, this industry, is making us believe that we can only get medicine if it's gone through all these steps. We can only get a medicine that's good and clean if we spend billions of dollars of research on it. And I think that's what the public needs to question and say, hey, there has to be a better way. There has to be a cheaper way. There has to be a more efficient way and a more wholesome way to get, effective drugs to market, especially cannabinoids, which, again, people have been using for thousands of years. If you look at the Ayurveda, ancient Chinese medicine, it's heck, stuff grows like wild on the streets of India. I mean, it's mind blowing that people want to make this plant illegal. When humans have obviously been living with the plant for thousands of years.
I also think too, like the regulatory thing, as far as how on the medical side versus recreational side, right? Like, so if you're a cancer patient and you are going through chemo, your option is to go to, say, your local dispensary, right? And to me, I could have eaten a whole dispensary and it wouldn't really have done to where, obviously I have friends that grow cannabis and do all that, and they made me, offering 1,000 milligram pills, which you wouldn't sell in a recreational thing, but to cancer patients, because it's recreational, you know what I mean? And then the cost factor, you know what I mean? To someone that's going through cancer, I have medical insurance and all that, and I'm still getting hit tons of medical bills. And then if I didn't have the connections that I did in the cannabis and friends that grew, and I wanted to get my hands on the cannabis medicine that actually helps, that's a whole nother story, you know what I mean? So I think there's a big difference between recreational and medical now, because it's kind of like, well, now you can go down and get it, but is that really the actual medical side that's going to help? You know what I mean? The recreational medical is still different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, how is that pre-roll going to really affect
yeah,
your
or
cancer?
I mean, for me, I believe the
Right.
THC, like for pain pills, if people can't sleep and you have pain and all those things, I think THC pills help. But what do you get? A 25 milligram
Right.
thing? I was taking 1,000 milligrams. Like these big pills. And if one didn't work, I took two. And what would happen? And I was just pass out. And when the pain would be gone, and when I would wake up, I didn't feel groggy. I didn't feel anything. I felt normal, you know what I mean? But it got me through what a pain medication should do. I made it to the next day, and I felt fine. And the more the days go on, the more you heal, and the more the pain goes away anyway. You know what I mean? So it's just the fact that once you take an opiate or do all that, the pain you're still numb. The pain's gone away, but then you have a whole nother problem. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's a huge difference between the recreation and medical side of what maybe someone that you're going through and what you need for. You don't have access to that. You know what I mean? I didn't have access to a whole syringe of RSO. You know what I mean? But I feel like it worked, and I didn't have to have surgery, and the tumor shrunk. I mean, I was like, everything was so great and all this with my cancer treatments, but it's like, yeah, I did a bunch of things on top of that, and then on the surgeries and all the heartburn medication and all the other things, I didn't take, you know what I mean? I took the 1,000 milligram pills, but I guess my point with everything is, if I didn't know anyone, I wouldn't have to have that, and if I did, I would have had to go spend who knows how much in a dispensary for it,
Yeah.
Your last point, Kristen?
Yeah, going off what he was saying, I am also very blessed to have these connections where when I went to my parents and told them I didn't want to take medicine anymore, my mom was already doing public relations in the space, and she was able to connect me with Kyle Turley, the founder of NWS5, and he was the one who gave me my first dose of medicine. And without him and without these connections, there's no way that I would be where I am right now and have the medicine and be able to get better. And I don't know what path I would be on, because every time I would go to the hospital in agonizing pain with chronic pain, I would just be handed an OxyContin pill or some form of opiate. And they would say, by the way, do you want a prescription for those too while we're at it? I would always shoot them down. We would pay for the hospital visit. I would leave without taking medicine, and that's how that always went, because I would refuse to go down that path when this industry and everyone is combating the opioid crisis so hard. And my mom's work line was combating the opioid crisis, and I just wasn't going to be another statistic, and I knew there was another way, and I'm just really blessed that I had those connections as well.
Fantastic. Well, I wish we've had so fascinating. We ran out of time, so if everybody will be available. I will go out in the hallway probably for questions. So I just want to thank all of you for participating. You all did a great job. Thank you so much.